Hey there, I am back with a deck preview for Patternwork from Jack Brutus Penny. William Morris began designing wallpaper patterns in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, a time when almost everything was being mass-produced, fast and soulless. He wanted to bring the human hand back to art, to remind people that beauty could live in the things that we use every day. He once spent weeks carving a single woodblock, chasing a design that could repeat forever without showing where it began. He said that a good pattern should go on as endlessly as the song of a bird, not mechanical, but alive. Now, around the same time, across the world, Japanese dyers were doing something very similar. They hand-cut paper stencils and brushed dye through silk, lining each layer so perfectly that the pattern flowed like wind or water, motion without beginning or end. Two worlds that never touched, both searching for calm and meaning through repetition. And that's exactly where Patternwork lies, between Morris's disciplined order and Japan's quiet rhythm, finding peace in the act of creating something so beautiful, one line at a time. And that brings us to the world of Jack Brutus Penny, an artist who doesn't just borrow from those traditions, he truly understands them. Every deck that Jack creates has an amazing intentionality behind it, not just illustration, but an entire philosophy built into every aspect of the design. And Patternwork might be his most refined expression of that yet, a blend of craft, culture, and care that Jack has become so well known for. So let's take a closer look at what he's built here, the art, the symbolism, and the meaning woven through every pattern. Now, the campaign has 6 decks in total, but for the prototype look here, I have 1 each from the gilded trio of decks and the dyed trio. Like I said, 6 decks in total in the campaign. And if you like what you see here, make sure to check out the link in the description. You can find out more about all 6 patterns and consider backing the campaign for yourself. Been a backer since day one and cannot wait for this one. I think after you see this, you're going to be as excited as I am. Now we'll get a look at both decks, but let's start off with the Gilded series. This one is called Marigolds and Moths, and we'll talk about why in a second. All right, so the Gilded decks are inspired by metallic elements that were often used, in particular in European designs. We'll talk more about how they use the metallics in their work, but first let's check out this tuck box. All right, so it's a 2-part construction. You can see the outer sleeve here and then the tuck box on the inside, and the outer sleeve is almost entirely done in metallic paper, that beautiful shimmering gold. You get the name of the deck, Patternwork, here across the top, as well as on the side, and then Jack Brutus Penny on the other side. But what really stands out on this are the cutouts. Super intricate designs that are carved into this one, giving you a peek of the colorful deck inside. Super detailed artwork, almost fragile in how fine the cutouts are, but it is a beautiful complement to the vivid colors that you can just see peeking out. Really nicely done. As you slide it off, you can get just that much better of a look at just how detailed those cutouts are, and then how colorful the deck is inside. And Jack intentionally put the sleeve on there, specifically so that he could put things like the name of the deck or his own name on the sleeve, and then leave the tuck inside completely wordless and just let the pattern speak for itself. And it's a beautiful pattern. These patterns were painstakingly drawn by Jack over months. And I think he did a fantastic job with them. He really drew inspiration from William Morris's style, and Morris was known for creating these patterns that were truly organic in nature. Yes, they were repeating patterns, but they weren't blocks that were so clearly put together. Instead, they were intentionally designed to just flow organically across the entire tapestry. And you can really see that in play in this one. Jack borrowed from that English legacy from William Morris, as well as the Japanese legacy from the dyers who would do the same thing. And very fitting for himself, as Jack himself is from England originally, now living in Japan. This one, the theme is marigolds and moths. So you'll see a mixture of the marigolds with little moths flitting their way in between the flowers. And the marigolds and moths deck is meant to be kind of a bittersweet design, and that's really where the beauty lies. So in Japan, marigolds are often placed as offerings at gravesides. Their deep color standing for grief and remembrance. And then moths, on the other hand, are always drawn to the lamplight and are often believed to carry the spirits of the dead returning for a brief visit with the living. And they come together in this pattern to form kind of a bittersweet note. It's a reminder of loss and the beauty that can exist in the same moment. This one, to me, is a great expression of a Japanese concept called mono no oware. It's really made visible here. It's this awareness that everything fades and that the fading itself can be beautiful. And so that's the thematic inspiration on this one. Beautiful yellows and reds, very organic colors on this one. And like I said, no words on the tuck box. The interior, though, does have kind of an alternate color version of the pattern, a little bit more muted tones to complement that outer tuck box. But beautiful tuck box, really particularly impactful when paired with that outstanding outer sleeve to form just a really nice package. But now onto the cards themselves, and we'll start with the back design. So the back design has a pair of designs. You can see that marigolds and moths repeated here, and then a second design on the other side. And that two different halves give you two different looks at different patterns, and I think really form just a fun, colorful design on this one. Full bleed, and so it's something that you know is going to look fantastic if you use it in fans. And because you have the two different sides, you get a completely different fan depending on which side that you choose to fan out. Beautifully done, and then of course has that gold metallic foiling on the outside. And this one, again, one of the most important thematic elements in this one, the use of metallics in this one really harkens to the use of metallic thread work, something that was used in both European and Japanese embroidery traditions. So in medieval Europe, they would use gold work or something called opus angelicanum, which was where they would use real metallic threads and weave them into the tapestries and royal garments, turning the imagery into this glowing canvas. In Japan, they would use a similar technique where they would, and they called it kinran, where they would weave gold into the silk and use it for Buddhist robes and armor, and it would symbolize light and divinity, and it would give everything this beautiful shine in the light. And you can see that really come to play as we start here with the four jokers of the deck. The four animals represented on these and the beautiful pattern work that surround them, but the animals themselves are done in that gold foil. And that gold foil gives everything this sort of ethereal quality. So as you turn it into light, you get sometimes kind of darker, sometimes light, and sometimes almost the entire image just disappears into the light. Beautiful transitions on these, and I love the integration of animals along with the organic feeling pattern work. So you get the cat here as one joker, there's a wolf as a second joker, there's a rabbit or a hare there. I love the sense of motion that you get from the explosion of color around them. And then, oh, missed one here. The hummingbird, I think it is, that's kind of flying through the air. Beautiful set of four jokers to go with this one. And I love the exploration of different patterns on each one of them. So there's your four jokers. The four aces on these give you a closer look at the different patterns that we're going to see explored throughout the entire deck. So four different patterns, one for each suit. The diamonds with this blue and purple pattern, and then the gigantic metallic gold diamond pip in the center, along with the lined pip and index there in the corner. And then you get the blues and purples and reds here on the club pip, the heart with the deep maroons and greens, and then the blues and faded greens and little bits of pink here as the spade pip. Beautiful quartet there. Love that diagonal swatch of color. Just really kind of brings these to life as the aces. The number cards all use that same diagonal swath and then use the smaller pips, of course, as you count up. So you get the spade pips here on that blue, green, kind of purple color. There's the purples and lighter, more organic greens as the diamonds. And then into the brighter oranges and reds that are highlighted as the clubs. And then finally into the maroons and greens of the heart pip. Beautiful explosion of color on these and really works well with those metallic gold pips. And then we get to the court cards, and very similar in design to what we saw with the jokers. These each feature these sort of anthropomorphic characters. You can see almost echoes of the classic court card from like a bicycle deck, but completely redrawn in Jack style. And then each one of them has the headdresses and feet of a different animal. So you can see the hare here represented as the Jack of Spades. and an entire mixture of colors to complement the gold work that's used for the main character. But the robes here, just almost a patchwork of different colors. Beautiful look to it all, and again, turning it in the light, you get that ethereal quality from the gold metallics on these. But each one of these, a different animal, so you can see different types of rabbits represented there as the spades, different cats, or a lion in the case of the king, represented here as the diamonds, and so on. You get dogs here as the clubs, and then finally the birds here represented as the hearts. Love that these are all one-way quartz. So you can see the feet there at the bottom. Very evocative of some of the older, more vintage decks that would often use those one-way quartz before the inspiration of the two-way quart came along. Jack loves using animals through his decks. Very clear in all of his designs. These animals actually even echo back to his original deck, Cultura Animalis. But beautiful looking. The gold matched with that explosion of color just forms such a dramatic look in this deck. Beautifully done and beautifully inspired here on the Marigolds and Moths deck, combining with that gold gilding, the color, just a fantastic design. But while there are 3 different gilded versions of the deck, there's also 3 that are inspired by the dyed tradition. This entire deck is kind of a mixture of European and Japanese techniques, and the dyeing side of things is very much the Japanese influence. So you'll see a lot of the same elements on these, but one key difference as we get to the cards inside, or a couple of key differences. All right, so the outside here, you can see that kind of greenish gold foil. Very similar design to what we saw on the gilded version of the deck, those same beautiful cutouts. But as I open this one up, you'll see that we get an entirely different pattern on the deck, or on the tuck itself. This one is a pattern called Dandelions and Dragonflies. The Dandelion and Dragonfly deck really captures one of Japan's most meaningful contrasts. So the dandelion in Japan stands for quiet endurance, these little puffs here. It's a small flower, a type of weed, and really, that grows pretty much anywhere, and it releases its seeds to the wind whenever the wind blows by. The dragonfly, on the other hand, you can see several of those flying around amongst the dandelions. The dragonfly is the complete opposite. In Japan, it's a symbol of courage and victory, and it was used for centuries on samurai armor and crests because the dragonfly never flies backwards. It only flies forward. And together, the dandelion and the dragonfly form this balance, humility and strength, stillness and motion, beautifully woven together into the pattern on this one. I love the symbolism, and every one of the decks has similar stories and symbolism. That's something that really speaks to me, and I really, really like the color palette on this. The kind of reddish maroons here mixed with the yellows and purples in the foreground, really just a beautiful design all around this version of the tuck. I like this version of the tuck actually better than the Marigolds and Moths. So if you're picking one, I think this is a great option for you. As you open it up, you'll get kind of the reflected color, or the muted alternate color version of the same design on the interior. And the cards themselves, at first glance, look pretty similar. You get a different pattern on these, but what really differentiates these is the edge printing on these. These, instead of the gilding, follow the dyeing traditions that are used in Japan, and so the color is used to paint the edges on these with that mixture of dandelions and dragonflies, same thing that we saw on the tuck box itself, but beautifully goes to every side of the deck and forms this dramatic and ornate pattern on all sides of the deck. So not just the back design, but now on the sides, you get that beautiful color. So the gilded, whether it's gilded or the dyed version, you get just beautiful work on these, inspired by the pattern works that he used to inspire the entire design. So on this one, you get a different pair of patterns on these, but a same kind of split design as the back design. And again, just like the previous one, beautiful looking in fans, and 2 different fans depending on how you want to use it, but just a really dramatic color and pairs so nicely with that painted edge. And then as you go to the cards themselves, you'll see a lot of the same design work, but a couple of differences on these. First, you'll see a little bit more in the background compared to the previous one, but you'll also see that the foils are different. This one uses kind of a rainbow foil, so you can see different colors, bits of orange, purple, and red in the foil, kind of gives you this ethereal pattern going through it. Again, kind of making use of that foil to give you, kind of a deeper effect to these, but the rainbow foil gives you an entirely different look than the gold foil. Still beautiful, dramatic, but fun in a completely different way. The artwork on these otherwise is pretty similar, other than that background and the use of the different foil, but somehow just that switch of the foil really gives this one a completely different look. The cards themselves, or the pips themselves, also have a big key difference. So instead of having that, remember the previous ones had the giant color swatch across them, these are white in the background and instead mix the patterns into the different pips. I love the way this looks. It's very patchwork looking as you flip through the number cards, but beautiful in its own way and just so fitting for a deck that seeks to explore patterns in such an interesting way. So great court cards, really interesting pips on these, and a great complement to the gilded version of the deck. And so, like I said, there's 3 different versions of this dyed version of the deck. And so you'll get different colors on the tuck boxes, different patterns, each one with their own set of lore, and then 3 different versions of the gilded version of the deck. And same thing, each one of the tuck boxes done in a different color and with a different pattern and different inspirations. It's a beautifully designed deck through and through, and one that really explores inspiration in such an interesting way. And that, to me, that's something that has always stood out so effectively with Jack's decks. He builds beautiful designs. He does fantastic artwork through everything he does, but it's the inspiration and the intentionality that he puts into all of his work that really makes him stand out amongst so many other talented artists. In fact, I'll give a shout out here. Jack was actually just recently the recipient of the Diamond Award from 52 Plus Joker for the Artist of the Year. And I cannot think of a more deserving winner. I was glad to be able to be there at the Diamond Awards when it was announced that he was the winner. And I will tell you, there is not a person in that room who did not think that he deserved it. So fantastic work to Jack. Congratulations for that. And I think it's just such a great recognition of the years of work that you've put into your decks. And Patternwork, just the latest chapter in that. Love the work on this one. I'm going to be back in the campaign, and I really hope you'll consider doing the same. Like I said, go check out the link in the description. The campaign is live now, and cannot recommend enough going to check this one out. But hope you enjoyed this look at Patternwork. Hope you'll join me in the campaign, and make sure to subscribe. Let me know what else you want to see in the future. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one.